Hey everyone, welcome. It's week 3 of the class, and I'm coming to you today from Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic, which is where work has sent me this week for a few days. So it's here for a research conference, a collection of various airport research professionals. It's sort of gathered here. It's every year it's somewhere else somewhere different in the Western Hemisphere, and this year it was in the Dominican, and so it's been really nice trip for me. So anyways, I want to take a moment to talk about week 3, sort of what we're doing, what the requirements are. I'll talk a little bit about the reading quiz this week as well, so you can be ready for that as well. So during week 3, we're going to talk about the U.S. Constitution. We're actually going to spend 2 weeks on the Constitution. This week we're going to talk sort of about the Constitution in kind of a broad sort of sense. Next week we'll look specifically at the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, and talk specifically about them with respect to obviously our civil liberties. The Constitution is a fascinating topic in and of itself, but given the time period that we live in right now in the United States, it's I think particularly salient just because you have as this famous Facebook post I keep seeing float around says, hold on, all of a sudden all these constitutional scholars are going to come out of the woodworks, or something along those lines. I'm fudging it up, sorry. So everybody seems to be a constitutional scholar, and it's amazing how much people don't know about the Constitution or how it applies or any of that. So that's what we're going to talk about this week, and then we'll talk about the Bill of Rights a little bit more specifically next week. If you remember one thing from my class this semester, if you learn one thing, and one thing specifically about the Constitution, understand that the Constitution is a document that pertains to relations between an individual and the government. So that's where the governing authority of the Constitution rests, between the government and the individual. So oftentimes you'll see, maybe on news message boards or something along those lines, you'll see maybe some stupid story about Burger King refuses to serve someone because they're overweight or something like that. I don't know. And naturally, you always see these comments that say like Burger King is infringing on my constitutional rights or something like that. Not to pick on Burger King. And that's impossible, and that's not even true, because Burger King is a private organization, and that specific act is an act between a private organization and an individual, which doesn't fall under the scope of the Constitution. The Constitution now, all of a sudden, if a public school refused to allow a student to enter on discriminatory grounds, then there's a constitutional case. Or if they were in some way prohibiting the freedom of expression of your religion, then you could bring up a constitutional case. And so that's the major difference there. I can restrict your constitutional freedoms, actually. I have that power, not to do it legally, because I'm an agent of the state. So I work for St. Pete College, barely, and the St. Pete College is a government entity. It's funded by the state of Florida, and so I'm trying to think of some way that I could, I can't even think of a way that I would do it, but you can imagine for yourself, or St. Pete College as an institution might do that if they allowed one religious group to have an organization but not another. And there have been cases over the years that have dealt with that, and we'll talk a little bit. Obviously, this is very succinctly tied to the judicial system, because who determines what's constitutional and not? Believe it or not, it's not pundits or talking heads on news channels. It's not Joe the plumber or Jack the truck driver or Maria the scientist or something like that. It's the federal court system, and at the top of that is the Supreme Court. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. They have the end-all be-all power to determine the constitutionality of specific acts. So you have those lecture slides in my video notes on that. You have a reading assignment this week, so you have readings from the textbook, then also 2 supplemental readings. The first one is actually, I just want you to check out the Wikipedia page about the Federalist Papers, just to give you kind of a high-level overview of those documents and why they're so historically relevant. I think the excerpt there is sufficient for what I'm trying to accomplish. And then I want you to read Federalist Paper number 10. It may be a little bit challenging for you to read, and I apologize for that, but it deals with I think this really important issue of the power of the masses, and how much power should the majority have, and it very much is in line with some of the stuff we've been talking about. So do check that out. You have a homework assignment this week. It's kind of a fun assignment. It's a political ideology quiz. It's okay if you don't understand what political ideology is. We're going to talk more about it later in the class. But the idea is that, everybody, and in this case, imagine a, let me see if I have a pen. We usually talk about ideology in a single unidimensional space, and so, it might look like this. So liberal left and conservative right, although the way I have it set up to the camera, it probably doesn't look like that. So you often hear people talk about being liberal or conservative or moderate, with moderates would be in the middle there. That's a unidimensional ideological continuum, and so certain people would exist on this space. Dick Cheney would probably fall pretty far on the conservative side of the space. Trying to think of somebody super liberal. The late Ted Kennedy would be super far on the liberal side on this side here. And this exercise, this actually looks at ideology in 2 dimensions. So the idea here is, and now off the top of my head, even though I've been assigning this forever, I don't remember what the 2 dimensions are. So imagine, it's just for mathematics. It's a 2-dimensional space, and then you could fall, different people will fall in different places. Along that, easy enough. And you have certain clusterings of people, so you could say that, these people are clusters. They're more likely to, politically see things the same, and so that's kind of how you get political parties, for instance. Clusters of individuals. This concept of clustering across various dimensions isn't restricted just to politics and political beliefs. It's actually how, here's a fun fact for you. It's actually how eHarmony.com matches you with the potential love of your life, is they have a battery of measures, and they can put you on I don't know how many dimensions. I'd have to remember what the commercial says. It's more than 2 dimensions, but it's hard to map. It's hard to get people to conceptualize more than 2 dimensions because you can't draw it. 3 you can kind of draw. But the idea is that they find people that on that that big graph, if you will, that are closest to you, and they match you up with those people, and that's supposed to be the love of your life, or something like that. And maybe it's successful. I don't know. I think I mentioned I met my wife on Match.com, so mine was more like purchasing a car. I just kind of clicked the things that I wanted, and they gave me a list of women. So I'm all about efficiency. So that's the idea behind the ideology quiz. The questions may not make sense to you, and sometimes people kind of get angry at the questions because they're like, I don't understand that. In the end, you're going to get 2 scores, and it's going to plot you on a map. Write down those 2 scores. For the assignment, you're going to have to provide that score, and then I want you to give a little bit of commentary whether or not you think the the score and the assessment. So read what it says about you, whether or not that matches. It may or may not. For some people, it's a statistical measure of human personality types, and so it's not going to be 100% accurate. And generally, what I found in giving this assignment is that most students, I would say probably 70% of students, say like, "Wow, yeah, I think that's me." And another 30% say, "No, it's not really." Don't pay too much attention to who they list as people you are like, because that's a very loose and broad definition. So if the program says like, "Oh, you're a lot like Hitler," don't take offense to that. It's far more complicated than they make it. But it's kind of a fun activity. So answer those 2 questions, and that's the only thing you have to do for this. And we'll talk more about ideology a little bit later. And what else do we have here? So we have the reading quiz for this week. The reading quiz is going to cover all the readings from weeks 1 and 2. It does not cover this week's readings, so you don't have to worry about that necessarily. If I remember correctly, for weeks 1 and 2, so you have textbook readings, 1 textbook reading for each week, and then in week 1 we also had John Locke's Second Treatises of Civil Government. So that's what will be covered. So here's my thing on the quiz. The quizzes are challenging, and they're pretty difficult. In part, it's because I want them to be challenging because I want them to challenge you to do the reading, and that butts up in sharp contrast to the fact that in America we don't do a lot of reading, especially for college classes. And I'm not throwing you under the bus because I'm guilty of that myself in some of my graduate classes. So that's kind of the purpose of it. The reading quizzes, just remember, there's going to be like a half dozen or so this semester. I drop the lowest quiz grade for one, so if you do really bad on one or you happen to miss one, then that one gets dropped. They're only 15% of your final grade, so you can do not as good as you want, and you can make up for it easily with other assignments. That's not a big deal. There's no really trick questions. My recommendation to you is, as you go through the textbook readings, highlight big pieces, big elements, big thoughts. There is a guide here in this that shows you exactly, it basically just lists the readings that we did. So just look for big picture items. I'm not looking for names or dates or anything like that, just general concepts. So everybody usually does poorer on the first exam than they do on subsequent ones, or on the quiz, sorry. So don't worry about that, and don't take the quiz. And obviously I've been teaching this for years, and so I've had the same reaction. I have students who don't do very well in the first quiz and say, like, oh, I'm going to drop the class. Know that the students do better on the midterm and final exams than they do on the quizzes. I provide a review sheet for the midterm and final that helps a lot of students out, and so the whole point of what I'm trying to say is, if you don't do as well, don't worry about it. There's room to improve, and I've had students in the past that have done by their standards horribly on the quizzes and have still made A's and B's. So it's possible. That quiz will be available to you. Won't be available until Friday, which is the 10th, 11th, 12th. I think that's the 13th. Is it really Friday the 13th? I can't see my calendar right now, but Friday of this week, and then it'll close end of day on Monday, so you have to take it during that time period. If you don't take the quiz, unfortunately the quizzes can't be made up. That's one of the few things where I don't have a lot of flexibility, and one of the reasons why I dropped the lowest quiz grade. So that's it for week 3. I'm working on the survey that we're going to utilize for our term paper, so I'll go into more detail about that and start posting stuff about that this week. I meant to last week, but we have plenty of time to work on that, so I'll get that available for you, so just be on the lookout for that. Have a great week, everyone. By the time you see this, hopefully I should be back in the States, and hopefully I haven't contracted malaria or hepatitis A. Among my Facebook friends, there seems to be, I think, a 30% prediction, of 30% odds that I end up with one of those two diseases by the time I get back. So let's hope that doesn't happen. Have a great week. Anything I can help you with, let me know, and we'll good luck on the quiz. Thanks.